Hi everyone and welcome to Season 12, Episode 1 of From Hope to Glory at Truro City with me, the United City FM. Welcome along. So we are now in our second season in the Premier League, having just about escaped relegation last season. So we go again. It's going to be a long old season again though. In the first 5 games, we played Chelsea, Tottenham and Man City, I believe. But today, in our first game, we play Bournemouth. So let's see how we get on. So I'm guessing it's going to take quite a lot this season for us not to get dragged into another relegation battle. But there are signs that potentially we could improve on last season. For one, we have made half a dozen signings, some of which have got a little bit of experience about them, which is positive, and a little bit of youthful exuberance as well. But secondly, it's all really for us about whether we can keep Abu Bakr fit this season. If you remember last season, he was out for 3 or 4 months in the end with a broken leg. And ultimately, that cost us a lot. He's our number one goal getter. And if we can keep him fit, maybe we've got a chance of staying up again. And maybe we've got a chance of improving our standing in the Premier League. So we'll have to see. But first up, for this particular episode, we get to check out our summer business. So to start our transfer roundup, we actually have to go to the very back end of last season in terms of our transfers, because I did a couple of bits of business before officially last season was over. We've got 3 here to look at, including this little section here that you can just see to the side of my face cam, which was our most expensive player ever at £25 million. Not all up front, about half up front and half on instalments, but we'll get to him in a second. The first thing that we'll talk about, though, is our outgoings. If we move on to this season, you'll see that a couple of players have left the squad. Will Reddy, who was in our reserve setup anyway because he'd lost his place in the first team 11. And Darnell Clark, who was our rotating right fullback option last season. Not quite good enough, I didn't think. I felt we needed a better all-round player in that right fullback position, which we have found. So those are the 2 that have gone out for finance. There were also several players that have left the club that were on loan for us. Only one of our loan players from last season, Colombini from Inter Milan, stays on for another season. So the likes of Mbayo in goal, Diakite in central midfield, Ibrahim on the right and Opoku on the left have all left the club for one reason or another. Some didn't want to sign, some got sold by their clubs to other teams, all sorts of different reasons, and some I just felt weren't quite up to taking us to the next step. So those have all left the club. We now only have one loan player in the club, which I think is a real positive. Everybody else is bought and belongs to the club now, so I think that's a step forward. So let's check these players out. So the first player that I bought in was a guy called Jeremiah Goodwin from Leeds United for 6.25 million, and this is the replacement for Diakite in central midfield. A little bit of a downgrade, although I think he's decent. At 24 years old and he's English, I think Diakite had a little bit more about him, but Diakite refused to come to the club after last season's loan and wanted to move elsewhere. He can cover quite a few different positions in one way or another, which was also a positive, but I will be playing him in a rough box-to-box midfield role. It's not one of his preferred roles, but I think he'll be able to do it. It fits our setup better. So he comes into central midfield. We can change the role up at some point, definitely, but Jeremiah Goodwin into the club, and the things that you'll not be able to see there are his tackling is 12, his technique is 12. There's a little bit of room for improvement on those, but passing of 14, vision of 14, he's got good determination, good anticipation, his fitness and stamina are decent enough. I think ultimately this guy will do a job for us in rotation with a couple of others. So Jeremiah Goodwin comes into the club in that central midfield role. So the next one up, if we go back to this list, is a guy called William White, who we bought from Middlesbrough. This guy is American, 13.75 million, comes in on the right-hand side as our new number 1 choice right-sided winger. Wright Phillips remains in the club, will play a rotation role in this position with White. But Ibrahim, as I said, has left the club. I just didn't feel he had enough to move us forward. This guy has a little bit more about him. Big gaps here and there. His mentals are not particularly strong other than the great determination and a couple of other ones. Physicals are fine, but it's that crossing and the dribbling and the passing and the technique of 16 all meant that I think we've got a decent enough player in our midst here with a little bit of flair and a little bit of pace that can get up and down that right-hand side, and he's got a little bit of experience. 20 caps for the US already at 26 years old. This is the type of player that will potentially move us forward a little bit from where we have been. So William White comes into the club and will play down that right-hand side for us. And the final one on this particular page, bought from Krasnodar for a fee in the end of 25 million, not all up front, is Alexander Ezvevkov. And that's not easy for me to say, but we'll get used to it over the season, I'm sure. And this guy comes in down the left-hand side and will play in this attacking left-hand side area. He's a direct replacement for Opoku, who doesn't come back on loan. As a right-footed player, will cut in off that left-hand side as the inside forward type of player or the inverted winger. Haven't quite totally decided. Probably inverted winger to start with, but he's got a decent long shot, a reasonable crossing, good dribbling, good first touch, passing of 15, technique of 15, lots of real positives. A little bit more pace wouldn't go amiss, but Dudita stays in the club and he's got a little bit of pace as the option down this left-hand side. So the couple of players there that I think that can really move us forward. And at 25 million, this guy is 18 years old, and I think will be a superstar for us potentially, but also a real good prospect for a future fee maybe, depending on how well it goes for us, etc. So there's lots of positives about bringing Ezvevkov into the club, and we'll see how he gets on this season in rotation with Dudita down that left-hand side. So those are the three on this page. If we then move forward, you'll see that we've got another three. And in these three, you'll see a couple of recognisable names potentially properly for the first time in this particular series. Neko Williams comes in. We bought him from Nottingham Forest for £7 million. And this is our new right fullback. And he is a severe upgrade on what we've had already. Really good determination, good pace and stamina about him, which is good. But with tackling of 13 and crossing of 15, with a good work rate, I think this guy is a real upgrade on what we've had before. Fink remains in the club as a defensive fullback option is very good, but moving forward, not so strong. So I think this guy, Williams, comes into the club as a real upgrade on what we've had before and will play in our right fullback position. We've got two more to look at, and the next one is our new #1 goalkeeper, and I'm really happy about this particular purchase. For £3.2 million from Malmo, we've bought Freddie Wendell into the club, and he is a really good goalkeeper, I feel. Obviously, you're not going to get a completely finished article for this sort of money. But ultimately, at 21 years old, a Swedish under-21 international, I think he's got a lot about him. There's a couple of gaps here and there, especially one or two in his mentals. But in the technical side of being a goalkeeper, 18 aerial reach, 17 handing, 16 one-on-ones. There's a good amount of distribution in there with his kicking and his throwing. I think ultimately we've got as good a replacement as we could potentially get. And he's 6'8", and that is a bit of a mountain of a goalkeeper. Think Donnarumma, basically. So yeah, this guy I think is going to be really good for us. And Bayo eventually got sold to Brighton by his parent club, and we tried to sign him on, but he didn't choose us in the end. And so ultimately, Freddie Wendell comes into the club as our new #1 goalkeeper. So we've got one more to look at, and it's a name that a lot of you will recognise. We bought him from Dynamo Kiev for 2.3 million, raising to 3.9 through various payments. Constantinos Mavropanos comes into the club. He's had a lot of experience. At 33 years old, he's pushing the average age of our squad up, but I actually think that's a good thing. Some experience into the club here and there is not a bad idea. I think that his physicals for 33 are pretty decent. His stamina is going a little bit, but he's still got a reasonable amount of pace, but with some tackling in there and some heading in there and some good determination and bravery, I think this guy can do a job for us and will definitely rotate in and around the starting lineup here and there, depending on which games we're playing and etc. But if we go to his history, you'll see that he's played for the likes of Arsenal, Villa, Dynamo Kiev, Stuttgart. He's been around, he's seen it and done it, and I think that was one of the things that we could use in this squad. So Mavropanos comes in as the last of our transfer dealings for this particular summer, and I'm pretty happy with it. There are moments along the way when we're rebuilding squads where we think we're never going to get there and it's never going to quite come together and we're going to be weaker than we were and all that stuff. But this time round, eventually, I found a way to improve our squad, I do believe. So we'll see how we get going. And to get going, we get Bournemouth in the Premier League. And if we go into the table and then to the season preview, you'll see that potentially, you won't be able to see it, it's behind my face, but we are still ranked bottom in the Premier League, 1,000 to 1 in terms of the odds. Bournemouth, on the other hand, in 11th at 150 to 1. So tricky start, but not the trickiest. We've got hard games coming up. But in the end, we just have to play them all home and away and see how good we are. So let's get on and do that. So towards the back end of last season, we changed into one of my favourite formations, which is this slight asymmetric style with an attacking wing on the left-hand side, but a more reserved winger on the right-hand side, just to give us a bit of an option. Playing in a custom vertical tiki-taka, we have got a better fullback option in terms of getting forward down this right-hand side on the overlap. So we're going to hopefully see that a little bit this season. So I think the players are there to potentially play this setup a little bit better than we had. I'm going to stick with it for a while. If it doesn't work out, we can always change it into the 4-3-3 or the 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2. There's lots of options here. But at the start, this is what we're going to play. In terms of personnel for this opening fixture, we've got a couple of misses. Izvekov, I'm still going to challenge, that's going to challenge me, that name. Izvekov, he's not quite fit at the moment. He's picked up a little bit of a knock. Will be out for the next week or so, basically. So he might miss the first couple of games of the season. But we've also got Gonzalez, our holding central midfield player, out. And he's going to be out for, I think, 3 matches because he picked up 15 yellow cards on the last couple of games of last season. So that put him into a 3-match suspension for the next time round, unfortunately. So he's going to be missing for a little bit. So Herbie Kane comes into that central midfield role just for now. But hopefully it's not too long until we get Gonzalez back because he is one of our better players. So we're in our asymmetric setup with our vertical tiki-taka custom style play. We've got a couple of absentees, but for today's opening fixture against Bournemouth in the Premier League, we go with Wendell in goal, Williams at right back, Benamor at left back, Baptiste and Mavropanos in central defence, Kane, Goodwin and Morrison in central midfield, White on the right, Dudita on the left and Abu Bakar up top with a bench of Nelson, Fink, Fenn, White, Thompson, Wright, Phillips and Henderson. So let's get into today's game and see what happens. So as an early team talk for the season, I've very chilled out gone. We've got nothing to lose. We know how good we are. Let's show everybody what we're capable of. Put a little bit of onus on the players to show up. Away from home, it must be said, in the opening fixture against a tricky side in Bournemouth who are tipped to finish about mid-table. So it's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, they're doing some construction work at their stadium to improve it. But ultimately, that first occasion to try and get a goal against us after a minute didn't really come to much and we managed to clear it. Now, for our own stadium, we originally have a plan. As the goalkeeper Wendell comes out and claims the ball off a corner kick, we have a plan to build a new stadium by 2032, I think it was, which is only next year as we sit in game. But that has seemed to have stalled a little bit. They've been struggling to find a site that they can absolutely nail down. So currently it's to be confirmed. So we're still away from our stadium. I think quite a long distance away from our stadium. I can't even remember where we are now. But we're not at home anymore. We are having to play all our home games in a different stadium whilst all of this is sorted out. So that could cause us a little bit of a problem. But fortunately, the stadium we've gone to is double the size of our original ground anyway. So our profits from that are decent. But it would be good to get a stadium sorted and move into it as soon as possible. That looks like it's going to be a couple of seasons away, though, at this point. Williams with a chance to impress down the right-hand side and really does so very, very nicely. There is our new overlapping right fullback in Neko Williams, and he eventually puts the cross in. And the defence of Bournemouth were all quite a bit passive, really. You can see it seems like Abu Bakar is in there, drawing the defenders towards him, which leaves a space for Dudita to run in off of that left-hand side and arrive late in the box, get the header on target, should I say, and it goes in for a 1-0 lead, just around the 15-minute mark, which is really fantastic. You saw early on, Bournemouth had a little bit of the ball here and there. Couldn't quite challenge our goal as much as they would like, I'm sure. But here we go with the right-hand side throw-in. Unfortunately, we give it away very easily. But a good amount of work from Baptiste in the central defensive area. Wins it back again. Goes up top to Abu Bakar quite early. Couldn't quite put it into the path of Dudita, who was on the run down this left-hand side, and eventually we get the ball back in our goalkeeping area. So nobody really wants the ball at the moment, it feels like. We keep giving it away and having to win it back again. We've got it back again, but give it away again. And this time, Bournemouth go over the top really, really quickly. Now, if there was no offside decision on that one, and we'll have to wait and see just on that. Yeah, it looks like it might have been. I thought it might have been. He did move quite just a little tad too early. You can see the lines will show up here. And it's very close, very, very close. Baptiste on that far side was a little bit lucky, but he just about stepped up enough and we got an offside decision. So we remain at 1-0. But half an hour into the game, 5 shots at goal, 1 on target, 7 and 3 for them. 50-50 possession, so that's not too bad. Their XG rating suggests they should have got a goal. They're up to 1 already. We're only 0.5 on ours. So you can see that they've been really, really pushing. But ultimately, we just about hold out. And again, at that near post, we just about hold out. Good work from the goalkeeper and the defenders to just about swarm the ball enough and then boot it clear. And we do just about get to half-time with a 1-0 lead. Not bad at all. Away from home. It was a good goal as well. Well worked by Williams down that right-hand side to get it on the head of Dudita. And ultimately, we are ahead. So let's see what we can do. We'll have to go with the outstretched arms. I'm happy with the performance. Keep it up. They're doing well away from home against a potential mid-table team. I think this is a good start for us. So let's see how we get on in the second half. We're not going to push the team in terms of shouts at this particular moment. We're just going to see how the first few minutes of this second half play out. The cross comes in from Bournemouth. We win it comfortably in the centre there. Benamor eventually boots it clear again, but does give it straight back to Bournemouth to restructure a new attack. And they've worked it down the left-hand side. Again, Benamor on that occasion gets a foot on the ball and clears it, but only into midfield for Bournemouth to pick it up again. And Caselli for Bournemouth eventually finds the space in the box. It's been coming since the start of this second half, to be honest. They kept pushing at us. We kept clearing it, but just giving it straight back to them. And eventually they worked an opportunity into the box, and Caselli did not make a mistake. And they go 1-1 very early in this second half. A little bit disappointing as a start to this second half. So we're going to go in there and we're going to demand more from them at this point. 54 minutes on the clock. Let's see if we can get a slight upturn in what we're able to produce. We're also going into the positive rather than the balance mentality as well, just to see if we can get a little bit on the front foot and cause them a few problems. But time is ticking away all of a sudden now. Now that Bournemouth are back in the game, it feels like the time has gone. 65 minutes on the clock, so 20 minutes into this second half. Dudita on the ball, who's picked a little bit of a knock, but does brilliantly well. And White eventually puts a shot in at goal, hits the post, rolls all the way along the goal line without going over it, unfortunately, and then they eventually get it cleared. That is as close as you're ever going to get without scoring a goal. And at 67 minutes, we're going to have to go in and see what Dudita's injury is all about and see if we can protect him just a little bit. Wants to stay on, but injury is affecting him. He's got a potential knee injury, so we are going to have to take him out. Unfortunately, with Izvikov not on the bench at all today, then we don't really have a direct replacement for him. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to take Dudita off and put Wright Phillips on, and he's just going to have to play on that on the wrong side, as it were, as an inverted winger, so cutting in on his right foot and see if he can do a job for us. We've also got a couple of other issues to talk about. Morrison in attacking midfield role, not really having a very good game. And also we got some nerves from the new guy, Goodwin, in central midfield as well. So I think we're probably going to take one of those two out. On this occasion, we're going to take Morrison out and put Thompson in just to see whether he can help us moving forward. And then we've got one more to make. And on this occasion, what I'm going to do, I am actually going to take out Goodwin as well and just put Joe White in there, who can play in lots of different positions for us, can play that central midfield role perfectly happily, and just see if he can come in and steady the ship a little bit in central midfield. So those are the changes we've made. We're going to have to up it to attacking mentality as well, just to really properly have a go at them. And when we come out, we're going to go into the shouts and we're going to fire them up also for this last 20 minutes or so of the match, where now the momentum of the game is properly, really in favour of Bournemouth, having come back to a new highlight and a new goal for Bournemouth. A real kind of hopeful cross in, really, off this throw in. Eventually it gets dropped back and then it's a long sweeping throw, and the defender did not follow the run of his player. He focused too much on the ball, was too static, and eventually the attacker got in front of him and put the header in. And we are now 2-1 behind, and this is what we're going to struggle with all season. If we keep giving the ball away, then they will keep punishing us. We have to keep the ball better than we have done today. Kane, brilliant ball through to Williams. Good cross in. And what happened there in the box? Did it hit a hand? Potentially, if we won a penalty kick. It looks like we might have. They're checking it through VAR. The penalty is awarded. We have been given a get out of jail free card. Can we put it in? Abu Bakar on the score sheet in the opening fixture. Brilliant from him on the penalty spot. A good cross in from Williams again down this right-hand side. He's going to be such an influential player for us on that overlap down the right-hand side. He puts the cross in, hits a defender's hand. We get a penalty and go 2-2 with 10 minutes to play. So at that point, we pause the game just so I can get this right. We're going to go back to our balanced mentality. We're not going to overcommit at the early stages of this season. If we can get a draw away from home, that's not a bad result. We're still really in the thought process of winning as many points as there are games in the Premier League. 38 games, can we win 38 points? Last season, we stayed up with 35. This season, we are now 3-2 down after a fairly magnificent shot off of a free kick. Wendell charges across the box, can't quite get there, gets a hand on it, and eventually it goes in. And we go 3-2 down with only moments to play, unfortunately. And it looks like we're going to suffer an opening day defeat, which is pretty disappointing, really. Having come back to 2-2, I kind of hoped that we would hang on for that. We didn't. And this just demonstrates how difficult the Premier League is going to be for us. Gonzalez is a huge miss in that defensive midfield role. Kane is also asking to leave the club. So there might be a second player come into this particular spot. We'll have to see, but that'll have to be a loan signing if we do. So there's still a few things that we need to iron out. Mavropanos played pretty well on his debut. A couple of others not quite so much. Dudita was unfortunate to get injured and he was playing well at the time, so that's unfortunate. Ultimately, we did all right. We got a few attempts at goal. We scored a couple of goals. we just didn't quite keep the ball enough and keep the ball out of our net enough, and we lose the opening fixture 3-2. So, unfortunately, along with Izvikov being out as well down that left-hand side for the next week, we've now got a 2 to 3 week layoff for Dudita for pulled knee ligaments, unfortunately. So it's not been a great start down in our left wing position, both of them being out. Sarmiento is still in the club, and he can play on both right and left, but to be honest, isn't quite up to standard, but he is in the club just to provide cover, and he's going to have to do that over the next week or so as we play a few games without these two. So that's really unfortunate. Couple of debutants, though, played pretty well. There are some good signs here and there. We scored some goals. We just have to eliminate the mistakes. And if we can do that and get a couple of early points, maybe we can get some momentum behind our play. And to do that, we've got a fairly tricky list of teams that we're going to be playing in the next few games. Chelsea, Blackburn, Tottenham, Man City all coming up. Then we've got Derby, Palace, Leicester, Southampton, Leeds. What we're going to come back for is we're going to come back for the Leicester City game at the start of October at home against a very good side, it must be said, but it'll give me a chance to update you on this run of fixtures up until that point. And then we will play Leicester City in the next outing for us on one of these episodes. So thank you for joining me for the first episode of season number 12. It is going to be a long, hard season again. Can we avoid relegation again? I kind of hope so. I think so. But we're going to have to play a lot better than we did today. So thank you for joining me. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and join my United City community. The more the merrier. Click that like button on this particular episode. That'll help me get seen by more people. Until next time though, take care of yourselves. I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.